Why do books have chapters? Yes, you heard me correctly. We're going to talk about the surprising origin today. Mom's here with me. Let's do this. Good morning, everybody. I take that big sigh of relief. Um, so, if you guys haven't already noticed, we enjoy the deep dives, the fun questions, and sometimes the ridiculously easy but not so easy questions.
That's
For
right.
instance, why do books have chapters? It's a question that I honestly never thought I cared about, but once I looked it up, I was like, this is interesting. So let's dive in. Did you guys know that early books and other tomes didn't actually have any chapters? Most things like scrolls were just continuous text, no breaks, just one giant thing, basically.
Mhm.
Other early books often had no chapter numbers and no natural stopping points. So, if you, as the reader, wanted to remember where you were, you had to remember where you were because you didn't have much of anything except for maybe if you tagged the
Do you remember,
page.
Rob, when you were studying for your bar mitzvah and you read from the Torah scrolls?
Yes, that is
They're
actually probably the
literally
perfect,
the
yeah.
perfect example. If you didn't know where you were, you would literally have to have somebody standing you with the pointer, literally a pointer. That's what it's
Yeah,
and would point to where you were because literally it sort of felt like a run-on sentence, right? It just kept going and go. So that's a perfect example for that.
pretty much. And especially if you didn't know what you were reading because it was a different language, you're like, this just all looks
Exactly.
like letters back to back. So that was interesting note that I didn't realize that originally that's what it was. And a question that I thought was, can any of us imagine reading an entire story with no periods or exclamation marks or
I'd never
question marks?
sleep. I would never sleep. I wouldn't know when to turn the light out to go to bed.
I would say though that I think it would probably change my focus, not necessarily how I read, but I think it would change my focus. What about you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I think what we're taught in school is how to write correctly in terms of grammar. So we're used to, the teacher says, okay, when your sentence is done, you put a period. When you ask a question, you put the exclamation mark. You paragraph it. I think a
Right.
paragraph I learned was, I think, 4 lines before you go to the next paragraph. So there was all of these things you learn when
Right.
you were
Structure. The
studying.
structure.
Exactly.
Right.
So the fact that people at one point had no structure, um, kind of baffling, right? So next up, chapters really started as navigation tools. So 13th century scholar Stephen Langton added chapter divisions to the Bible for
There
reference and
you go.
teaching. Speaking of, early chapters basically meant organizational systems, but zero storytelling, so to speak. And that makes sense also with what you're writing. Things like religious texts, for instance, were more a guide, were more the parables of what you were to be taught, what you were to be learning. Other scholars then eventually adopted the system, and poof, we then had texts that became closer to what we would have today.
So
Yeah,
interesting. I mean, I think about that, and chapters came. The Bible is a perfect example. We just used it before, and the written Bible literally then had chapters. The actual books that came out around it had chapters and little
yeah,
side notes and things like that, notations. And then from those chapters, think about it, Rob, you have outlines or the table of contents. So
true.
that literally that identifies. So I think this totally makes sense. It's an organizational system, not necessarily this part of the storytelling. It's a way to organize it so you can jump. We have the same thing when we're doing videos. You have all the little timestamps, right? To go to the certain places in the video. Do you think that authors still think of chapters as navigation? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, probably not as big of a deal for them now because it's just what it is. Obviously, when you are writing and going to publish, you want to make sure everything is correctly done. So you
Right.
want your pages to be, numbered correctly and your chapters to be numbered and all that. But I don't think they look at it's kind of just one of those habits where it just becomes a thing. but I don't think it's as necessary because it's just what they do. Like they know this is what a book is supposed to look like, so they just and they and if you're talking authors who have been back 50s and 60s till now, obviously they've been writing enough where it becomes second nature.
Right. And in today's time, when you talk about a book that you read and you talk about a particular thing, you're not saying go to chapter 3 and look at
Exactly.
the paragraph, right?
Exactly. Usually you're just like, oh, hey, when you get to the middle of the book, you're going to
Right.
see a giant
Exactly.
whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, next up, chapters eventually were what helped your brain process the information that you're reading. So, readers retain information better when it's divided into smaller segments. I mean, hey, I ADHD, I like it when it's small. So, I am happy that you break things down little by little. But I think it also makes sense too. I think it makes it's more natural. And those natural cognitive breaks allow you to improve your comprehension on what it is, and this works for anything. I remember when I was in high school and I was studying, one of the ways I learned to study was to notate little bullet points. So if I was studying for a science test, I would go through the chapter, but then basically pull out the key things, and that's what I was using to memorize. So that way, I knew I was actually getting the
Right.
information. And then they also create a sense of progress. Some people call it the one more chapter effect. It's the joke where, oh, I'll just read one page. And then the next picture in the comic is, it's been 12 hours later, like, oh, that was a
Right.
great book. Um,
Especially with
so,
audiobooks. With audiobooks, where I tend to say, stop it after this chapter, turn it off, because
mhm,
I sometimes fall asleep when I'm listening to an audiobook and then I don't know where I left off. So I tend to have it turn it off with chapters. And it's what you're saying, one more chapter. And you go, I'll just read
right.
one. Do you like shorter chapters or longer chapters?
Depends on the mood of the day. I think usually, well, I noticed in some of the Audible or audiobooks that I'm reading, there's chapters, but there's like mini chapters within it. So there's kind of like sections of each chapter. And I kind of like that because let's say I didn't want to finish the chapter, but I want to just finish the idea. I
Hmm.
can kind of finish it up, hear it, read it, and then just, turn it off or close it. And I haven't really lost anything because I finished a full point.
So is that
So,
different for fiction versus nonfiction?
I mean, for me, fiction, if I'm in the middle of, let's say, like a battle or an important scene, I don't really want to just cut off in the middle of someone's monologue because then it's like you turn off the movie and you're like, wait, why did So I
Right.
think in fiction, for me, if I'm in the middle of something important, I'm going to want to finish it out to the end. In nonfiction, because it's usually written in more of a, um,
Point by point.
scientific form, I guess,
Right.
it's easier to kind of just stop where you want to because you've already finished that thought.
Well, I'm curious. Sometimes authors will combine both short and long chapters in their books. I'm finding that in fiction books in particular,
Mhm.
and I don't know why. Some chapters they'll say it's 15 minutes. Some chapters are 7 minutes, and it makes no sense to me. Any thoughts on is it that chapter
Um,
chapter maybe?
I've noticed that, and I've thought I didn't put too much thought into it. Maybe it's how long it takes to read fluently, so people can understand, and maybe some things take shorter to say than others.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how it was written in terms of if you're reading the section, it would only take you 5 to 7 minutes versus 15. I That's something to look into. I think that's
And
actually interesting.
here's another question for you. So, I like to read books that there are many in the series. So let's say there's 7 books, right? I kind
Mhm.
of look at those books as chapters in the life of the characters,
Mhm.
right? So the books become chapters in a sense. So there's chapters within the book, and then each book in my mind is almost another chapter because it's just the next part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like that. I don't know why I like that, but I like that because most of the time when I get to the end of the book, I don't want it to end. And so in this case, I know there's
And
right.
if it's done well, then that's what you get. If it's done well, you end up wanting another book, even though you realize the entire series is
I'm
done,
noticing.
and you're
Yeah,
just like,
I'm
wait, but
noticing.
more.
Yeah, I'm noticing authors that are putting out 9 books at a time and say get the whole set, or giving away the first book for free so that you get into it and then you want the rest. Just an aside thing.
Right.
Very interesting.
Speaking of chapters, chapters shape the pacing and the style. So, chapter length, like we were just talking about, influences rhythm. So, this actually might answer your question as to why some were, shorter. Short equals quick tension, maybe just something you really want to get the reader to do. Longer chapters make you stop and think. So, maybe for those longer chapters, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, the author said, okay, so this part right here you're about to read, I want you to, close your eyes and just hear it or read it or do whatever, which I think is a good, when
Yeah,
you think of the authors we have, it makes a lot of sense. Like somebody like King, for instance, I've actually noticed in some of his books, like I think it was either It or Cujo, some of the chapters were very tiny, some of them were very long. And when I'm thinking about it, those longer chapters, he really emphasized a lot of details that you didn't think were important until after you finish it, you go, oh, now I see why you put so much emphasis.
interesting.
Authors choose their chapter breaks as at emotional turns or major beats, and then some writers use very short chapters, and some just don't like them at all and just won't put them in their book, which is also fair because depending on who you are as the author, you might be known for longer passages, but you might be an author that's known for shorter.
Right,
People for if you're reading, for instance, poetry, each poem is kind of its own little story, but even within poems, some poems are really long. The Odyssey, for instance, some people think of it as a poem because even though it's broken down, each verse is the song of him. It's basically like, let's tell you an adventure, but we're going to tell you an adventure in form of like a play or in form of
right,
music. So it is very interesting to see who does what and why. And I think it's just everybody's personal preference as the author.
right. Do cliffhangers, like the chapters that are cliffhang, make you want to keep reading, or do you just say nope,
Only if it's good.
only if it's good?
If I read something and I finish chapter 1 and I go, "This is horrible," I don't go back to that book. Just personally, because if the book doesn't grab me and I really don't want to do it, I have other things I could probably read that might
But,
actually hold my attention.
but to your point, then, if it does grab you, would you just keep reading and reading and reading and reading?
Oh, yes, yes. If the person did a good job to really grab my attention and kept my brain there, I would go, "Okay, what's coming next? Let's do this. Let me see how good you can, hold on to me while we go."
Well, clearly you have chapter books in the bookstore, right?
Yes,
Dumb question.
quite a few.
Quite a few. In fact, probably all of them. So go check out the bookstore. Great prices. If you buy a certain amount, you're going to get free shipping. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to really look into. And
Mhm.
again, you know how much I love used books. So that's enough said about that. Enough said about that. Any last thoughts, Rob, about chapter books and all that stuff?
Aren't you glad we have chapters now?
I am. I'm totally glad. If you have a topic that you want us to tackle or talk about, let us know. We would be happy to do that. Go out, give somebody an awesome day. See you next time. Bye.